All right, welcome back to another episode of the Blasters and Blades podcast. We're glad you came back. We're equally glad we didn't scare you away with our insanity. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So, without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. Luke Barnett, introduce himself. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself to the listeners and viewers who might not have heard of you?
Hi, I'm Luke T. Barnett. I'm the author of Galactic Core, Half-Orc Saga, and the Grouse and Jay series, and many others that are popping around in my head that want to be put on paper. And thank you, JR, and I guess they're not here, but thank you for your other hosts for serving our country.
Yeah, and Cisca has the migraine. Sometimes we call those kids, but she was nice. She called it a migraine today, and so we've got that going on. And this is the recording time we have right after we scheduled all of our episodes. That's when Nick's boss over at the boat yard he works at, because he's a border patrol. That's when they changed his schedule. So we try to get him on weekends and for one-offs when we can. But
yeah.
Anyway, they couldn't make it today, but they miss you, and I'm sure they're going to feel cheated that they didn't get to talk to you today. But instead, we get to go to the next part of the introduction, dear listener, which is how we first found them. So we're in a lot of the same author groups. I think I first found you, Luke, through the Keystroke Mediums podcast,
Yeah,
which is a
so.
four by and how to author podcast with Josh Hayes, Scott Moon, and so many other authors as co-hosts that it's hard to keep track.
Yeah.
And then I think we met in person at the 2018 50 books to 20 or 50 books to 20. Oh, I don't know, the 50 books conference, whatever that is.
No, I was actually
I've
never gone to the conference yet. It's a way
or
big.
is it 20 books to 50K?
Yeah.
Is it 20 books to 50K?
20 books to
50K.
50
books to 20K doesn't sound as good.
No,
well, anyway, it's an author group that Craig Martell and Michael Anderle started to spread the knowledge and sort of congregate it all in the same place. But apparently you didn't go to that conference, so maybe I met your doppelganger and you just didn't know he was there.
Yeah, that could be. I have a twin out there somewhere. He went to my high school, so.
All right, so before we get too deep, we have to do the religion question. We get to see if you get to stay. So, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Yes.
Okay.
If I have to choose,
so all of the above.
Yeah, if I had to choose, I would have to say Star Wars because I feel like it's the more character centric. But I love the other two series just as well.
So, if there's character centric is what you like, is there a specific franchise that that gives that to you better than those three that you think of? That, like, if you're looking
as far as sci-fi,
yeah,
not that I've actually indulged in. No, I don't think so.
Okay. No. I sort of picked the Star Wars, Star Trek, and Firefly because all of them exist in movie and book format, so it's sort of a win-win.
Oh yeah.
So let's try to do that. So, and because we're polytheistic, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or the Wheel of Time?
Lord of the Rings, because Game of Thrones, everybody dies, and I hate those stories, and I hate watching.
Yeah, the Grimdark doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, no, I don't like Grimdark. And then I can't stand the women in Wheel of Time because they're bossy and overbearing, and the guys are all wimps. So I don't like this series either.
Did you read the books? Was that your take from the? Did you read the books, or did you watch the Amazon movie or TV show?
No, I started reading the Wheel of Time books. I made it through book 1 and started book 2 and just gave up.
Game of Thrones. I watched the show. I haven't read the books yet.
Yeah, I've heard the show's not very good compared to the books.
They always say that. I'm not a purist like that. There's plenty of times where I think that the books were as good, if not better. I mean, where the movie was as good, sometimes better than the movie.
Yeah.
At a minimum, you have to accept that they're different products. And like, I like the Star Troopers, the movie, better than I did the book as far as fiction goes. Now, the book as a political treatise of the thoughts of Robert E. Heinlein, or is it A. Heinlein? I can't remember. Robert Heinlein. Like, if you look at it as a political treatise on his worldview, it's entertaining, and I read those kind of books. Like I've sat through Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. But if you're looking at like fiction and you find him through the movie and you're like, oh, this is a rip roaring action story. No, it's not. It's mostly thinking about philosophy.
Yeah,
So, like, in that case, as far as entertainment purposes, that's purely enjoyment, movie beat the book. If you're looking at academic enlightenment, I like a lot of the thought exercises he did in that book. I'd pick that one. So, I'm
yeah,
not a purist. I will say that I did before I got sucked into the first episode of Wheel of Time. I had to call a buddy of mine, Jesse, who actually read the books, and I'm like, does he just hate men? Because all the women, like you said, were overbearing, and the men were wimps.
yeah,
And he's like, no, 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 this is why. And there's this backstory about the males can't have magic because it was corrupted, and they're trying to undo it. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. They should have put that in the dang series, but
yeah,
you got an
yeah,
incomplete sort of vision
yeah. I
of
like Lord
that.
of the Rings. I didn't know anything about it until I went and saw the movies. The movies were great, and then I went and read the book, and it was hard to get through. But like the further you get into it, the greater the characters, and the writing is just phenomenal. Um, but yeah, I love the series and the books, but like you said, they're different products, and so I like the movies, but not the same way I like the books.
Yeah. I actually found Lord of the Rings through the Hobbit cartoon that was out back, I think it came out late 70s,
Oh
early
yeah,
80s.
hmm
So it was go. Sorry, I had a little bit of a two-legged interruption in the child variety. Sorry about that.
I
I will try to
understand.
remember to edit that out. So we here at the Blasters and Blades are both like both the fantastical and the scientific. Which was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
I don't know which was first, but my greatest love is fantasy. I like sci-fi. I like the tech and the science of it. But I just love how in fantasy you can just take your time and enjoy the world, and it's just more. There's more. There's not so much stuff that can get in the way of these characters interacting. I mean, you can do that in sci-fi too, but I just feel like it's more natural. I like the natural feel of fantasy better.
Okay. So what was your first memory of engaging in speculative fiction? Was it reading a specific book, watching some movie, show, cartoon, playing a game?
Um, I mean, if you count Mighty Mouse, that would probably be it. But beyond that, I watched a lot of TV and movies and played video games. So Star Trek, Trouble with Tribbles is the first uh, sci-fi series I remember seeing. And the Next Generation and Quantum Leap I watched with my mom.
Oh,
And
Quantum
then
Leap was awesome.
yeah, I love Quantum Leap. And then which interesting, he also starred in Star Trek, so that worked out. so
Yeah.
But then for fantasy, it was always the video games because the video games are the great fantasy stories. You didn't see very many good fantasy movies besides Willow. Um,
That was a good movie.
yeah, yeah, that was a pretty cool movie. Um, but yeah, that's so like Final Fantasy series, Secret of Mana. Uh, those just really fired my imagination.
Okay. So what is it specifically about the speculative fiction umbrella genre, so fantasy, sci-fi, horror, etc., that you love?
I think just the ability to go anywhere and do anything. Um, you can go through any adventure you want without really endangering yourself. Um, I love a good story and seeing characters accomplish what I never could. It just inspires me and excites me, and it's like I don't know, just it helps me to keep going.
Okay. That's a good answer. So how did the love of the inspirational story transition into you writing your own stories in that space?
I think just wanting to do the same thing, like tell my own stories. Like I would have ideas for uh, current IPs that would, what if this happened? What if things went this way? So I wound up writing a lot of fan fictions when I was younger, and then some of my own original works because I just came up with this idea, like oh, this would be cool if this happened, and started making up my own characters. Playing D&D, that was a big influence too. I forgot about that one. We would play these D&D games, and I would like go home and I would write the story about my D&D character. Uh, so yeah, that's pretty much where how I transitioned into it. Just kind of came naturally as I took in all these stories.
So when you played D&D, were you more often the game master, so you could set the stage and tell the stories, or the player character?
I was a terrible game master the few times I tried it. I kept forgetting stuff. I couldn't come up with answers. I couldn't think on my feet. No, I was terrible. And I was always a player character. But I always came up with these
Okay.
weird characters like half elf, half fairy, and all these weird kind of combinations. Like what's happened. And finally, I just like got. I was just kind of like, okay, I'm done trying to do that stupid thing. And I came up with like a half orc barbarian, just a simple half orc barbarian, and he wound up being the main character of my first book, the half orc series.
So what edition did you start playing? Was it
I started
3.5
in second.
probably, or
No, I started in
oh,
second. Yeah. And then third came around and the D20 system, and I played in third for a while until I got married, and she didn't really play, and I didn't really have time to go and play because I was spending all my time with her. And so that was the last time I played for years. I picked up fifth recently, but the game was not nearly as like I don't know engaging as it was years ago because it was online. It was people I didn't know, and I don't know. I just wasn't engaged as much. But yeah, second with Thako.
yeah. So many authors will let their own real life experiences influence the ways they tell stories. So, are there any specific formidable moments you think that shaped you as a storyteller?
I can't make a direct link, but I think I can say that when my parents divorced when I was 4, my dad's lived halfway across the country for most of my growing up, and I was often bullied and teased in school, and so I think that all that created in me like a desire for a sense of family, healthy, edifying relationships that build each other up, women who are strong but still feminine, men who are honorable and brave, and seeing good come out on top, and people retain their integrity even though the entire world may come against them. They still do what's right and do what's honorable, and they succeed in that. And I just I think that's what influenced me to write the characters that I write.
Okay, that's a good answer. So, transitioning from the writing side, let's talk about things from a fan angle. So, have you gotten any cool fan art or had anybody cosplay your characters yet?
I wish I was at home. I'm at my job right now, but because I have my first piece of fan art done by my son. He drew my Gash character, and it was just the coolest thing ever. It's just this like little thing on paper, and you just I don't know. I folded up and kept it as a bookmark for my book. It's just the coolest thing ever.
So, how old is your son?
He's 13 now. He drew that when he was probably 11.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So,
Yeah,
which book is Gash from that character?
he
Is
is
that the
from
orc?
The Half Orc Saga, Half Orc Redemption. He's the main character. His name is Gash Bloodaxe.
So, is that now? Obviously, that's not what we're here to talk about. So, we'll just derail for a moment. But is
Okay.
that story then? If you're 11, well, then 11, now 13-year-old was reading it, does that mean it's age appropriate for teenagers?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. There's some blood and violence in it, but not gory, not excessive amounts, and it's completely clean because I don't take God's name in vain. I don't cuss, so there's none of that in there either, and there's no
Okay,
sex.
okay. That just sounded like something that's up my own son's alley. So I was like, wait a minute, let me see if that's age appropriate. Because there
Yeah,
are
yeah.
some authors whose books I like, and I think they'd even like the story, but no way in hell they're reading it till they're older.
No, no, no. I read this to both my boys, and they loved it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
So has anyone ever asked for your autograph?
yeah. Actually, so I work for a food distribution company, and one of the drivers that delivers came in one day and handed me my book and said, "Hey, can you sign my book?" I'm like, "Oh, dude, you're awesome!" It was like totally
That's
unexpected.
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what was the was that the first time someone asked you for your signature?
First and only so far. Yeah.
So if somebody says, that sounds cool, I'd like a signed copy of those books. Is there a way that they can do that on your website?
Not on my website currently, because I'm doing it myself, my website myself, and I'm not very good at it. But what they could do
But if they
is,
emailed you, could they reach out? Would
yeah,
that be
they can
something you could
email
arrange?
me on Twitter, Facebook, any else locations. Yeah, just shoot me an email. I'll be glad to send you one.
And for your books that are with Athon, since that's a independent publishing company, would they go through you for those signed ones, or would they reach out to Atheon if they wanted
That is
signed
a good
copies of
question.
that?
I'll have to find that out, but they can always reach out to me, and I'll reach out to Athon and
Okay.
ask them. Yeah.
All right. So you've heard it here first, people. If you want the autograph, you could be lucky number 2.
Yeah.
All right. So finally, what is the weirdest or funniest story about an interaction with the fans that you started writing?
uh, Not very weird or funny, but I texted that one driver I told you about. I texted him something the night before to tell him about his route, and he texted me back a phrase that was from my book. I didn't realize at the time. I was like, what does this mean? I don't understand. And he comes in the next day and tells me about it. I'm like, oh, that's right. That was from my book. I was like, "Oh,
That's awesome. So
yeah.
now you have a beta reader that works for your as a coworker. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Put them to work. So this is where we talk about everything you have written. So you listed the half orc story
Mhm.
and the hyperspace outlaws, which is the oh,
Galactic
drawing
Core.
a blank. The Galactic Core series. Were there other books that you've written, other series yet, or were those the only ones that are out in print?
Those are the only ones that aren't in print. I have written other things. I started writing a superhero high school series, kind of like X-Men Evolution. Um, I've written in a couple anthologies. In the Contact This anthology, I put a story in there. Um, and the KSM Farthest Reach anthology. And I have
Okay.
numerous short stories and novellas that I've written that I haven't put out there yet, but there's a couple of them that are available on my email list for free.
Okay. Well, if you get with me, as soon as we're done with the show, I'll point you to some open calls, and maybe you'll find a home for them, so readers can read them,
Oh,
because that's
sweet.
part of the fun, right? We don't just write because we want to write. Well, we do, but it also helps when people get to read it, right? That's part of
Oh,
the
yeah.
fun.
Yeah. I don't have any of that
So
imposter syndrome. I want people to read my stuff.
yeah, me too. That's part of the fun is to hear them talk about it, even if they hate it, like telling me why. Like that can be sometimes a fun
Oh, yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. That's great.
Well, assuming everyone's respectful and a mature adult,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
it's 2022, so that doesn't always happen.
No.
But while all of those sound fascinating, today we're here to talk about Hyperspace Outlaws, which is the first book, as you mentioned, in the Galactic Core series. So, where did you get the premise for this universe? How did you come up with the idea that became this series?
So multiple places. So there's some fan films online for Star Trek versus Star Wars. People just take scenes and mash them
Oh,
together. And they're pretty. Some of them are pretty cool. Some of them are pretty cheesy, but some of them are pretty cool. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like I can't actually do that, but I can do something similar. Um, and then I wondered like, what if you took Samus Aran from Metroid and put her in a Star Wars universe, or what if you took Armitage the Third, put her in a Star Wars universe? And I just started taking all these influences from all these different sci-fi um, media that I've had over the years, and just kind of like twisted them together into this cool series that I just thought was really neat. And the Galaxy's Edge series by Nick Cole and Jason Anspach, awesome series. And I don't really read military sci-fi, but that's a really good series that I actually enjoyed. And I even took inspiration from them. I actually wanted to write for them. They politely said no, which is fine. Actually, I'm glad they did because that spawned me to write Galactic Core. They there's it's called Galaxy's Edge. I thought, okay, I don't want to just copy them, but they said that they wanted to play in the sand with their action figures. So basically, they wanted to make Star Wars, but make it Stormtroopers cool. So it's kind of like what I'm doing. I took all these influences and just said, okay, I want to do it, but I want to do it this way. And so that Galactic Core was born from all
okay. So before we dig in, can we take a moment and we could talk about this cover?
that. Yeah.
So I want to get that stuff out of the way so they can see everything. So, what is the origin story of this cover? Because I really like it. It's kind of got a little bit of a psychedelic feeling, got all the grayscale. It reminds me a little bit of the certain Groot series, which we will. There's definitely some influences
Yeah.
of other series there. I can see a little bit of the Firefly with the guy with the brown coat.
Hmm.
So, what's the story of this artwork? I really do like it.
Yeah. I'm glad you like it. So I'm very visual, so I designed the layout for this. Now the artist took that and went with his interpretation, which is fine. But the psychedelic stuff is all him. I didn't do that, uh,
Nice.
yeah, the I wanted to go for that Star Wars EU kind of thing, but then like my story's about the characters, so I wanted the characters in the cover because that's what appeals to me.
Yeah.
And Ethan was kind enough to actually go with my vision for the first cover. The second one, they went to something else, which is fine. Second cover is awesome too. It's just different vision. But those are the three main protagonists. Lonnie is Princess Lonnie, and is the girl with the pistol. And then the guy is a Galactic Ranger. He has a huge, he's like the duster trench coat type of thing, like the old Western. And then the snarky alien cat gun nut on there.
And that gun looks a little sharkish. I like it, but it does look like a shark.
Yeah, it does kind of look like a shark. I didn't even think about that. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I just now saw that. That's pretty sweet.
And then you add his teeth. Like I'm digging the cover. I really like it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty sweet cover.
Like I alluded to, it does have a little bit of the Guardians of the Galaxy vibe too, which is also cool.
Yeah, I've heard Guardians of the Galaxy, Firefly, which are both influences for the story. You know, like
cool. So
yeah, good.
So moving on to the book itself, what would your 30-second elevator pitch be for this?
My 30-second elevator pitch. Holding a galaxy together ain't easy, especially when that galaxy's out to kill you. Doug Lancer's on the run. When the peacekeeping military known as the Federation and the law-enforcing Galactic Rangers join forces, forming the Galactic Empire, things quickly go south, especially for anyone not on board. Hunted by his former brothers, Lancer is reduced to bounty hunting to survive. When his path crosses with an ex-Imperial fighter pilot fleeing the Empire, things get even worse. Can he stick to his convictions and oath as a Ranger, or will he fold under the pressure? And how can he and the band of outlaws he teams with hope to stand up to a galaxy-spanning empire without getting blown to space debris? Blaster bolts and spaceships tear across the galaxy in hyperspace outlaws. Fans of Outlaw Star, Metroid, Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars, and the Galaxy's Edge series will love this romp through hyperspace on the trail of a few outlaws just trying to do right. Well, most of them.
Okay.
Probably read through that too fast.
I like it. Okay. That was more than 30 seconds. It was the blurb on the back, but I dig it. I cheat too. So yeah, I really do like the cover though.
Thanks. Yeah, I could come up with an elevator pitch that quick.
No, you're good. You're good. Sorry, we're gonna pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man, and I'm gonna show this commercial interlude.
Sweet.
In a world where magic is controlled by law and government, mages are both coddled and persecuted. Corey Monroe knows she isn't a mage, and her best friend is. Reality isn't always what you know. If you are looking for an urban fantasy with found family, an education-based magic system, and evolving storylines, try My Luck by Mel Todd, book 1 in the Twisted Luck series, available exclusively on Amazon.
All right, so we appreciate you sticking with us through that commercial interlude. That was much appreciated. So I was trying to come up with during the commercial break something totally cool to do for your 30-second elevator pitch, but yeah, I'm not witty on the fly, so that's what Doc's for. So instead, I'm just going to ask you, what makes your series special?
I think it scratches that coolness factor that we space fantasy adventure fans get from all that sci-fi media we've enjoyed. Like, you know, like we mentioned before, Guardians of the Galaxy, Firefly, Outlaw Star, you know, all this cool space stuff that just makes me go, yeah. I think it scratches that, especially with Disney kind of tanking Star Wars. I think it's needed out there.
Yeah, the rule of cool is definitely important. So, would you call this more space opera, more hard sci-fi? Like, what? How would you classify the story?
I would say
I guess I'm asking you the subgenre question.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I'd say it's space opera, space fantasy, space western. It's definitely not hard sci-fi. There's no hard sci-fi in it. I mean, I don't like hard sci-fi, but I like sci-fi with explanations to make it seem logical, to make it make sense. But I'm very much into the fantasy aspect of it.
So you want just enough hand wavium to make it believable so you can hang your hat and move on.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I can dig it. when you get too technical and it starts to feel like I'm reading an FM manual, a technical manual,
Right.
I do tend to start skimming ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to push the I believe button and then get to the cool stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's basically what I'm doing.
so what tropes do you feel like Hyperspace Outlaws hits the best?
I'm not familiar with all the tropes, but a space adventure, a misfit group of outlaws trying to save the galaxy, standing up for what's right no matter the cost, a snarky alien sidekick, gunslinger in space. That's what immediately comes to mind. Like I said, I'm not
Okay.
sure up on all the tropes.
Yeah, I know they constantly add ones to the tvtropes.com or whatever that website is. So,
Yeah, my
yeah,
third
I
book
dig
had
it.
a trope in there, and I didn't even realize it was a trope. And I was asking my friends, like, "Oh yeah, it's a trope." I'm like, "It is." I'm like, "Okay, cool."
Some of it, if you read enough or you watch enough like fiction, you start to just internalize a lot of that structure and you
Yeah,
don't even always realize it has a name. So I remember the first time I took English Lit in college and they're like, oh, this part of the story or that part of the story, and they're using the fancy names, which at this point escape me again. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know it had a name. Okay,
yeah,
cool. And then you move on because you just do it without thinking about it because it just becomes part of, and you'll notice the story structure type, like with the 3-act versus the 5-act versus how some other nations tell their stories. You start
right.
to notice that more, but you don't always, like I said, you don't always know why it feels off or why you like it, why you don't sometimes. But it's like I said, it's that you internalize so much of story structure.
And I do especially because I'm very intuitive in the way I do things. Like, I don't know if this is a later question, but I kind of write by the seat of my pants. So I got to figure out the story as I'm writing it, and I can tell. I mean, I've learned a lot about writing, and so when I go through the story as I'm writing it, I'll hit on something. I was like, I automatically know that I need to set this up early in the story, or this has to make sense this way, or something like that. And it's that intuitive stuff that I'm hitting on those tropes, like you said, but not really realizing they're tropes or what they are.
And tropes exist and they're popular for a reason. So, like I
Right.
said, if you read enough, you're going to encounter it. Will get to the point, and this isn't just because we're authors, because it also it affects people who don't write but read a lot. You get to be to a certain point, and when you've read so much that nothing really surprises you anymore. And the ones that they do surprise you is because they gave a cheap twist at the end that they didn't set up. But if they do set it up, like it becomes pretty obvious. Like I can tell you when they're showing you in a mystery, for instance, this suspect, like based on where I am in the story, I'm like, too early for him to be the guy, and you just move on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep. Yep.
the ones that always get me on those are the ones where it was the guy they started with the whole time. It was him the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as long as you don't prove him innocent when you move on, like I'm totally down for it. Like those ones, you got me.
Yeah.
But yeah, you sort of internalize it. So because your name is Hyperspace Outlaw, we normally ask the tech question a little bit later, but what kind of tech is in this book? I mean, like, do you use wormholes, FTL? Like, how do you move about through space?
Yeah. So since I'm combining a bunch of different genres, I decided that there would be some different technologies. And not to go too much into the lore, but in this particular galaxy this takes place in, there is hyperspace. It's unexplained hand wavium type of thing. I'll probably explain it later on because I just like explaining things. Um, but it's just basically like Star Wars, go through hyperspace, faster than the speed of light. Um, there's um, um, there's something called a jump drive, which I made up, which is basically teleportation, but it's extremely expensive and extremely hard to calibrate and keep going. So the characters keep running into problems trying to use it. Um, so there's those two. I think that's all right now, but might be some coming later too.
Okay. All right. So now onto the story itself. So what
You
can
were
you
just
tell us
asking
about
about
your?
space travel, right? You weren't asking about other technology.
No, we'll ask other technology later.
Okay.
I was curious about the space travel because of the name of the
Yeah.
series and the name of the first book. So onto the story itself. So it looks like, based on the cover and you naming them, that you've got 3 main characters. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yep.
So what can you tell us about them?
So Doug Lancer is a cowboy in space. So you have all these cowboy archetypes like Han Solo and Malcolm Reynolds, but they're not actual cowboys. Like, what if we put an actual cowboy in space? So I made an actual cowboy. He's a Galactic Ranger, which is a law keeper across the galaxy, and kind of based on Texas Rangers. Um, and he's finds himself like suddenly all of his comrades have turned turncoat and gone against what they swore, and so he's the only one standing up for what he swore to do, and they're all trying to hunt him down. And then you've got Lonnie Tarasca, who's a princess, but also a fighter pilot, and also a gun nut, um, and also a mechanic. She's like an all around person. Um, and she's running from the Empire she was just in because she found out too much and something the Empire is planning, and um, hooks up with Doug to help unravel the mystery. And then there's Arch Attack, which is a alien species that's basically resembles a large house cat. The cover looks like he's a panther. He's not really a panther. He's just a large house cat, and he's snarky and he's just a gun nut as well. And he almost didn't make it into the book until I rewrote a scene and added him in there. But he's like a great addition, a great counterpoint to the other two who are honorable. He's just like the smart mouth, wisecracking, kind of a jerk sometimes, kind of kind of character. Winds up being very honorable, and he's got a couple of surprises in himself as well.
So is he bipedal? Since you said he's a large house cat, or is he?
He can be, but he normally walks around on all fours. But he can be bipedal. He has opposable thumbs, which most of his race does not have. He actually had surgery to do that on purpose because of his backstory. But he's constantly calling the other two bipedals. You lousy bipedals.
All right. So were there any? I mean, when you generally, sometimes when you have so many main characters, not that three is necessarily that many, you don't always have room for the secondary characters to shine. Were there any secondary characters in this book that are memorable to you that stand out?
Yeah. So another set of characters is this Armored Corps battalion or squad. So basically, you take Galaxy's Edge, um, that whole thing, and put it in this universe, and that's you got the Armored Corps. So I made a squad of Armored Corps troopers, and I wrote a short story. I think you actually read it. It was originally Galaxy's Edge fanfiction, changed over to Galactic Corps.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I beta read that. You're right. I remember.
Yeah. So Q and Bot are two of my favorite secondary characters of the Armored Corps squad. I won't spoil it for you, but they're just interesting characters.
That struck me more as Clone War troopers than it did Legionnaires from Galaxy's Edge. Yeah, I mean, they're similar, so I get it. I mean, they're similar, so I get it. But when I read it, because of the tone you took, wasn't as gritty. I was reading more like, clone troopers as opposed to Legionnaires. But that's just a delivery style. It was still a good story. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. So, no, I probably would agree with you. I've talked to Walt Robillard, and he was saying that the military wasn't there with that story, but he still liked it. And I get that because I haven't been in the military, so my knowledge is limited, and I don't like the dark. I don't like getting too gritty like Galaxy's Edge does. It's a little bit too far for me, so that's probably why it came across that way.
It was still good, and I read all of it, so I don't care.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, does your story have, other than the overarching bad guy of the Empire Federation at all, does there bad guys that they have to face? Without spoilers, obviously.
Yeah. So there's two main villains in the first book, and one of them is the Commodore and commander of the ship that Lonnie fled from, Commodore Ferris, and she's just a hard-nosed, military-minded woman who's determined to shut Tarasca up, keep her secret. And then there's Drax, who is just the epitome of evil. He was inspired by Ridley from the Metroid series, and he's just an evil creature. And I do something fun with Ferris in the third book that I didn't even expect to do. But Drax is just an evil being that is almost unstoppable.
So, with the Space Ranger Corps thing you've got going on, did you name anybody Walker?
No, I didn't. That's a good
Walker,
idea.
Space Ranger.
I should do that.
Make him
I
a
just
ginger with a beard.
I just sort of seen in a later book where I introduced a character that's hints heavily at Doctor Who.
Oh, that's awesome. Does he get a special screwdriver?
It's a she, but yeah, she does.
Well, that is awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So you are a practitioner of all the sci-fi religions, apparently. Why commit to just one, right?
Yeah. I haven't seen Babylon 5 yet. I've heard it's very good, but yeah, most of them, yeah.
All right. What about Stargate?
Yes, I've seen Stargate. I love the movie. The series was decent in parts. I haven't seen the whole
Okay.
series.
Oh, I love it. But I like
Yeah.
campy and cheesy too, so I'm a little abnormal. All right.
There we
So
go.
speaking of characters, as the author, we often do horrible things to the people we write about. So if you meet yours in a back alley and they know who you are and the hell you've put them through, how do you see that interaction playing out?
Depends on the character. Doug would just shake his head and tell me how disappointed he was in me. Lonnie would probably punch me in the face and the gut. Arch would probably just shoot me several times.
You bring dishonor to your house.
You killed my entire planet. And there's some more. I'll kill you some more.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes. So kill a few people, that's a tragedy. Destroy a planet, I mean, that's just a rounding error. Like, yeah, it happens.
Rounding error. Yeah, sure. Yeah, why not?
I mean, with 1 billion, 100 billion, okay. Do you actually show the destruction of the planet a la Alderaan, or do you just mention it in the back? It's happening in the background.
No. I mentioned it in Arch's backstory. He mentions how his planet was firebombed, and he has a couple of flashback scenes where it kind of describes vaguely the devastation, but nothing detailed. But the planet's still there; it's just fried.
So it didn't get the Alderaan, smashed it into a bazillion pieces. You got more of the Covenant landing over Reach and glassing the planet.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Good reference there.
So now we're going to ask you for a sneak peek at how the sausage was made. So were there any cool scenes or ideas that you cut from the final book that, maybe you use someday or become something else?
No, there are scenes in future book I've done that with, but there is a short story that I wrote for the KSM anthology that was kind of the genesis for this whole thing. That because of the way the books have worked out, it's no longer canon. But I went ahead and put it on my email list as a free short story, just for some enjoyment to read. But it's I took the characters from that and put them back into the main series because I just love them so much. But I can't use this short story anymore because the continuity doesn't make sense.
So would it be possible to rewrite that short story with just a few tweaks to make it canon again?
It probably would, and I probably will do that. I just wanted to have something out there for my readers to be able to read. In addition to that, I have to figure out a way to do it. But yeah, I'd have to completely rewrite it. I couldn't just tweak some scenes, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, that stinks. So there'd be too much. There's a lot. You'd almost have to write it again. That's what you're
Almost.
saying.
Yeah. I mean, I could rewrite some scenes and kind of make it fit, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that needs to change in it.
Fair. So at least they can see the origin point. Like they get to watch basically be like, no, I don't want to say a rough draft because it was professionally edited and it was a good story, but
Right.
like Mark
Yeah.
1 of the story and you're writing Mark 2 kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like it says, like a genesis of it. So the beginning.
So finally, what can you tell us about the universe itself? So in miniseries, at least the good ones, the worlds where the story is told is as much a character as the protagonist or antagonist. So can you give us a hint of what we can expect from this expansive world?
Yeah. So it's a galaxy. So it's a galaxy populated by humans and aliens, a lot like Star Wars. But this is a galaxy far, far away. But the humans came from Earth, and Earth's mostly been forgotten because it's been 300 years. But they came there as a glitch in the new experimental hyperdrive that was on a colony ship, and they don't know how they got there. They don't know how they got back, how to get back, and so they wound up populating this galaxy, which is a ring galaxy. It's not a normal spiral galaxy. It's actually I had a picture, found a picture online of a galaxy that actually looks like this. It's actually like an oval, and it's in a strip, and it loops around. One end is looped around the bright galaxy center, like we have the center of our galaxy, but it's on the end, so it's kind of asymmetrical. And then there's like these weird nebula in the middle, which I call the interference clouds. It's the mid-dark, so it's like this mysterious weird space area right in the middle of the galaxy.
So what you're saying is, as weird as it is, it could be real.
Yeah. The shape of the galaxy at least could be real, and there's it's called a galactic core, but there's no actual core. Like in Star Wars and other in Galaxy's Edge, you have the places that are closest to the center of the galaxy are the core worlds, and then you get out further to the edge, and things get a little bit worse, and kind of like the ghetto. But here, there's no centralized galaxy; it's just this ring. So the core worlds are the worlds that are most affluent, most vital to the just the economic stability of the galaxy. And there's no overarching ruling force, council, or anything like that in this galaxy. It's mostly it's just each system or world has their own government. The Empire, which was the Federation, was just keeping peace, keeping from great wars breaking out. And then the Rangers were just enforcing laws and chasing down lawbreakers that needed to be brought to justice in 4 different worlds and different systems.
So obviously this is far out in the future because this series isn't done yet.
Right.
Do you see at any time linking back to Earth and having those two now disparate and separately evolving entities like matching heads?
Oh yes, I've already begun the process, and this was long in the planning too. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to write another series that's more based on Star Trek: The Next Generation, because I grew up with that show, and it's a lot about I miss. But the idea is, so I'll give a background. I don't know how spoilerific this is or not, but the idea is that humans developed hyperspace technology. It went wrong. The colony ship disappeared, so they scrapped it and went with warp drive. And while this galaxy wound up developing more of a Star Wars feel, our galaxy wound up more going towards a Star Trek feel. And so eventually they're going to cross over, and already have to some minor degree, and they'll come together in a giant Star Wars versus Star Trek type of clash, but not Star Wars, Star Trek.
Yeah, understood. That sounds cool.
Yeah, so that's the end of the series, or at least the end of the 3 trilogies. I don't know, somewhere in there, it's going to happen.
Down the line, but no, I'm here for it. So, Hyperspace Outlaws is clearly part of the series. I know because it says so on Amazon, and you just mentioned there are currently 3 books out in the series. So, is their stories done? Will there be more from these characters? And where do you see it going next? Obviously, you've expounded on the series after the series is finished, but where do you see this series itself going?
So there's another main villain that isn't revealed in the first book, but it's really the mastermind of it all. So there's the 3 books out now, and then I'm writing the 4th book right now. And like I said, I make it up as I go, so I'm not exactly sure what exactly is going to happen. I know the end goal, but I don't know what's going to happen in between. But I'm going to write another trilogy, and then I think at the end of the 3rd trilogy is when they're going to face off and maybe have that big Star Trek versus Star Wars clash. But I'm introducing more characters, throwing in more influences, and actually beyond the Star Trek versus Star Wars clash, I have plans for more stories involving more sci-fi influences, and bringing in more stuff and other things happening. So I'm hoping to make it a big expansive universe, kind of like EU used to be.
Okay. So, we've talked a little bit about the hyperspace and the space travel technology. What other sorts of tech can we expect from these books? Or magic, since you mentioned Star Wars.
Yeah. So there's no force, because I think that's just too powerful. I think it's too OP. But there's a phenomenon called the awareness, which only women get. Certain women get it, and there's no explanation for it as of yet. But it's basically clairvoyance. But you can't use it to move objects or anything like that. But you can just you can see into the future. You can see through objects, but it's only visual. It's not audio or anything like that. There's also Lonnie Tarasca is from a family line that has an inherent power. I won't spoil where they received it from, but she carries something called a singularity gun, and it amplifies her power. And it's actually very inspired by the caster gun from Outlaw Star. But she can use that power to summon anything that's imbued with that power to her, kind of like the Force, but it has to have that power already imbued in it. It can't just be like any object or whatever.
So is this gun that's on the cover the Singularity gun?
Yeah, that's not how I imagine it. That just looks like a regular blaster pistol. But yeah, she does have a Singularity gun. The way I envisioned it was this like silver kind of tube type of thing, all in one piece. But yeah, that's supposed to be what she has, and it just lets out these just depending on what shell goes into the gun, it can allow a different effect, like a wide energy blast, EMP, a self-collapsing black hole. Depends, like I said, depends on the shell. So, and that is all amplified by her family's power.
Okay. So of all the tech that you invented for this universe, which one would you want for your daily use?
Oh, well, I couldn't have the awareness because I'm not a girl. Although awareness would be cool. I think I like the singularity gun, but it's just destructive, so I don't think I'd ever be able to use it. So I think that would be it. The singularity gun. There are also cyborgs, and one character in the third book has bionics fused to her nervous system, which slows down her aging, makes her faster, stronger, reaction times better.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So if you had that technology, how would you abuse it in your daily life?
Oh, if I had the singularity gun, I'd probably go to the firing range a lot and just like, hey guys, look at this. The awareness.
That poor fire range officer, like,
Oh
not
man.
again. It's him. I thought we banned him last month.
I'm sorry, did you want to ban me? What? Click. Like, just go on about your business. Yeah, the awareness, I'd probably just, avoid a lot of uncomfortable situations. Actually have the answer for people when they ask me something because I know what they're going to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or avoid them if you didn't want to answer it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So you've covered that you're. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's it. I was thinking.
So you've covered that your universe has aliens in it.
Uh-huh.
So how do you go about creating them when you write them? Did you let nature inspire you? Were they creations of your nightmares? Did you make it up out of whole cloth? Like where do your aliens come from?
Different inspirations. So Architect, his race are called the Akkadi, and they were partly inspired by I think her name is Aisha from Galactic Core. She's like a cat person, but it's different form. But I didn't know about. I wanted to have something like that, but I didn't know what to have until I saw a picture online of this bipedal sapient cat holding dressed in like a Rocket the Raccoon type of outfit, holding this gigantic arm cannon. I was like, oh, that's my character. And so that's where his race came from. And then there was a Star Wars. I don't know what her name is. It's a Jedi. She's got blue skin. She's a blue skin Twi'lek. She gets shot down in like Attack of the Clones, or maybe it's the third one. I think it's the third one. She gets shot down, but I always thought she looked really cool. And then if you play one of the video games, I can't remember what computer game it is, but you can actually play her. And she has a double lightsaber, and she just comes in like sweeping. I thought she looked really cool, and so I made a race that's kind of like her, except just instead of two tendrils, they have like several tendrils, and they're thinner. Other races I just kind of made up on the fly. Shapeshifters, I love shapeshifters. I made up a race that's got shapeshifting skin. I made this guy who's got a squid fur face. Just kind of random, actually. Just, oh, this will look weird. Let's do that.
So did you add lightsabers since you mentioned them?
I did not, because I don't want to copy Star Wars. I just want to take the coolness factor and twist it and make it my own. And lightsabers
Obviously, you couldn't call it a lightsaber. But
No, yeah,
energy sword.
energy sword. I was tempted to. I was very tempted to, because lightsabers are just freaking awesome. But no, I decided to steer away from that because I don't want to get too close to Star Wars.
Fair.
Yeah. I was gonna say something else.
So go ahead.
I can't remember what I was gonna say. So go ahead.
It happens. So clearly this interview is winding down. But before we wrap up, was there anything about Hyperspace Outlaws or the Galactic Core series that we didn't ask you that you wanted to tell us?
Just that it's a fun adventure, and the further you get into the books, the more characters you get to. It doesn't get overwhelming, and all the influences don't get mashed up in a weird, doesn't make sense kind of way. I actually make sure it makes sense, and it's actually a fun ride, and you can read it and pick out things like, oh, I didn't know where you got that from. It's just a lot of fun, just kind of like throwing back to your all the sci-fi that you love, and just enjoying it in that way. And like I said, the further you get into the series you get, the cooler, the more influences, the more characters, the deeper the relationships, and the deeper you get into these characters and their motivations. And I've had a lot of fun writing it, and I'm gonna continue to have fun writing it, and I hope you have fun reading it.
So last question, because I'm a nerd like that. So how did you design your spaceships when you like discussing the aesthetic? Do you describe what they look like? Because there's some pretty funny stories if you're a Star Wars fan about how they came up with the way the Millennium Falcon looks. So did you do any of that when you were creating your spaceships, or you sort of leave a little bit up to the imagination?
I leave it a lot up to the imagination, because I'm really not very good at that. I've tried to design Lonnie's ship. I couldn't really quite picture it. If I could draw it better, I probably would. The main ship, the Blue Moon, which that's the artist's interpretation on the cover, but that's not quite how I imagined it. It's more of just a crescent, like a crescent moon shape. And I got the idea from the Ferengi ship on Star Trek, because it's kind of shaped like that, and I thought that look was cool. So I just kind of modified that and made that the ship. And actually, he starts off in a different ship, which is basically a horseshoe shape, and it's just this. Lonnie comments how ugly the ship is. It's like the ugliest thing she's ever seen. But it just fits the cowboy motif.
Fair. All right. So are these available in audiobook for people that like to have their stories read to them?
Not yet, but they are doing audio. They've lined up a audiobook reader, and I imagine he's working on it now. I'm not sure yet. But there will be audio out as well. I don't know if it'll be out on the same time the ebook is out, but it will be out eventually. So watch for that.
So how long are these books? What length of adventure are they getting when they buy your content?
They are, so the first two are around 80,000 words, which is about, I believe that's about 10 hours on Audible. I don't know how many pages that is. The third book is probably half as long. I mean, 1.5 times as long. So it's a longer book. And it's got a lot more story in it. So that'll be probably closer to 15 hours or whatever on Audible. I'm trying to think how many. I think it's 115,000 words. So it's a much longer book.
Okay. So the 80,000 is, if you assume about 300 words a page, we're looking at 267 pages. Depending on how they format in the font, you can get anywhere between 250 and 500 pages or words a page. But
okay.
But yeah, so you're looking at least 250 pages if that's how you think, dear listener. All right. So before we let you go, dear listener, we'd like to remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. So do your thing, people. And if you want to go the extra above and beyond steps, start a blog and review it there. Hop over to Goodreads, BookBub, all the other places where fine ebooks can be purchased and review it there. You can check it out at the library, and if they don't have it, you can beg them to get it. That always helps. And lastly, is this a book wide or is it Amazon only?
It is Amazon only for now. Athon only produces through Amazon, but eventually I'd like to go wide. But yeah, just Amazon for now.
Okay. So, Luke, if people are interested and they want to know more about you, the man, the myth, the legend, how can listeners find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Luke and Rose Barnett. Twitter, I'm not on there often, but I'll respond to messages at Bar Up Today. You can go to the website, luketbarnett.com. You can always email me at, let's see, my author email is, no, I can't remember. It's author story. Hang on one second. It's author stories.
We'll put it all in the show notes, dear listener. We've got all of his contact information.
Yeah.
We'll put everything in the show notes, and you can check him out there. We put him on the spot to remember all of the things while he's in the middle of his workday. He's chatting with us on his lunch break, and we just lost him. But have no fear. We can still finish this show because you can find us, dear listener, on our Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show, twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show. You can find us over on the email at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Did you remember the contact information for your email? Otherwise, we'll just throw it in the show notes.
It's author life with Luke T. Barnett @gmail.com.
Well, there you go, people. And again, our email is blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook where all the shenanigans happen over at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. We have a website at anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-tech-and-tech-blades, where you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on, people, and it is greatly appreciated, all of you who do support. You know who you are, all one of you. You can support the show also on buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley, where we will be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I will keep Doc Cisca and Nick Garber duly intoxicated. They will drink until their liver surrenders, and if they were here, they'd tell you their mamas didn't raise no quitters. And money jokes aside, people, we appreciate everything, even just sharing it, listening, and all the things matter. We're here to have fun, and we want to drag you into our insanity with us. And through your generosity for season 1, you covered all of our overhead, and we couldn't ask for more. So, I'm just trying to be witty and pretty, and I failed at 2 of those. So maybe next year it'll be our year. And in the meantime, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom.